reality is that podcasting is an incredibly amazing tool. And there are different stages that people are at. I know that from the responses I've had, there's some of you are just curious about podcasting, others are ready to go, and I've got a couple of people who are already underway with their podcast. So people at different levels here, but I think that the real key here when it comes to being here today is wanting you to ask the question, why are you curious about a podcast? Whatever stage you're at, what makes you curious to be here today and to have that podcast potentially as part of your strategy? So if you've got any responses to that, please drop them into the chat. I'd love to see what has got you curious to be here today. I'm going to take a quick sip of water and then we'll keep moving along because, as I said, we've got lots of things to get through today. But this is just an opportunity to understand a little bit about you, where your journey is at, and making sure that I'll be able to cover those things as we go through today. Of course, as I mentioned, if there are questions and things you want me to answer, please feel free to put them into the chat as we go along. Otherwise, I will definitely have an opportunity for some Q&A right at the end. All right. Well, I can see that some people are curious about just understanding what's actually involved in a podcast. So thank you for that. And I'm getting a few direct messages here, and that's totally fine. If you don't want to put it for everyone to view, feel free to do that as we go through. But yes, curiosity just to understand what's involved in a podcast. Curious about equipment. That's another thing. So we will get to some of that, and trying to understand the strategy and what's involved in it. Okay, some good responses. Thank you for sending them in direct messages. I appreciate that as well. So, all right, let's continue on as we go through. I want to talk to you about this concept. 1.5 million. That is how, billion, I should say. That is how many people are listening to podcasts per month around the world. 1.5 billion. That is a massive number. Now, they are listening to more than just one podcast. And I think that's something that you need to keep in mind. There are lots of opportunities. Anyone that says that there are limited opportunities for businesses because there's too many podcasts is kidding themselves. I can tell you that, and I'm going to include this other statistic here for you as well, is that 99% of podcasts do not make it past 20 episodes. So to be in the 225,000, yes, that's right, 225,000 active business podcasts, you have to make it past 20 episodes. 225,000 out of 1.5 billion is pretty good odds, particularly when they listen to multiple podcasts. And if you dumb that down to whatever area of specialty you are in, and particularly some of you will be more geographic in your offer, the opportunities are absolutely huge just in the podcast alone. But as we go through today, you'll understand that there's more to it than just the podcast. Okay, so I want to talk about these guys. I don't know if any of you recognize these guys. There's points in the chat if you can name these four faces. The one thing about it is, before I give away the names, the one thing about all four of these, they are very, very well-known podcasters. They all have very large audiences. They've built a huge reputation. Yes, Mel Robinson is amongst them there. We've got another three to get. Who knows who the other three are? Yes, only know one of them. Okay, so let me just say that the unique thing about all four of these people is that not only do they have big podcasts and they're very well known, but they have very significant teams helping them put that podcast together. One of the problems that happens in small business is we tend to take everything on and believe we should do it all ourselves. I'm going to tell you that as you go through today and understand it a little bit more, podcasting is a very, very powerful tool. But trying to do it all alone is what often ends you up in that situation where you don't get past the 20 episodes. In fact, most don't get past 6 episodes. That is the absolute reality of it without having teams behind you. So let me name these other people. So you've got Steve Bartlett from Diary of a CEO on the left-hand side of your screen. Mel Robbins, as was picked up from the Mel Robbins podcast. You've got Joe Rogan in the middle from the Joe Rogan Experience, and Brene Brown from Dare to Lead. All very worthwhile podcasts if you haven't heard them. Very worthwhile having a listen to. But remember, when you watch them on their own on screen, they are not on their own. They have people in their ear, they have people on their iPads, they have large teams. I think Steve, for example, has as many as 40 people working for him to help get that podcast up and running. You've only got to check the show notes and listen to the end of the programs to hear all the people they thank for the production to understand they are not doing this alone in order to get there. And sitting in a studio by yourself and trying to just bring on a guest, well, we'll go through some of that in a little bit of in a little while to explain what is involved in doing that. So I won't dwell on this too much for those of you that haven't had a chance to check out any information about me, and I hope you do, and have a look on my LinkedIn profile. It's probably a great way to start. Look, I've been doing this for a very long time. I guess it goes back to my early days where I started in radio and talk radio. And that was back in too long ago to remember, but it was back in the late 80s, early 90s. And I worked building very large audiences in those days for what was a major talkback radio station in Australia. I have did that for a long time, worked in TV, but also I've worked across podcasts for many years. I've hosted my own podcast. I've hosted podcasts for other businesses. This is something I do day in, day out. So it is something that, I know a fair bit about, and I hope to impart a bit of knowledge as we go through today. Okay, so let me keep going. And again, if you have any questions, please feel free to hit me up as we go through. Okay, one of the things that is important for you to understand today, and if you are in the car and watching this way, we'll make sure we get you the link afterwards. But part of the booking, as it says there, includes a private session to help you with your next podcast step. Okay, so I want to listen to what your ideas are, what your plans might be, what your curiosity might be. Any questions that you want to have, that you want to do it in a one-on-one session, that is what this is here for. It is very much a 2-part session to being part of this once you registered for today's event, excuse me. So I'm going to put I'll put it in the chat, the link in a little while as well. But make sure you've noted that down. There'll be another opportunity to put it on screen later on in the presentation. But I really want to make sure you book that in. So jump on in and do that while we're talking today, because it is going to be a really good time for you to ask some questions and us to unpack a little bit about what might be in your head, whether there's a great opportunity, how it fits with your business, all those kinds of things. Anything you want to explore, we'll do that in a one-on-one session. And it's not about selling. So anyone that thinks it's a sales trick, it is not that at all. This is an opportunity to talk about it. And if you then want to progress further and talk about some opportunities for you in a podcast, we'll do that in a separate session. But this is a free opportunity for you. Okay, let's keep moving on because there's a lot to get through. So here's this simple idea. What got you here will not get you there. The truth of the matter is that you've been doing lots of great things to get you to a certain point. But if you want to get to the next level and you want to scale your business, you have to be doing more. Yes, I'm looking at the message here. Utilize podcasts with providing education to different target audiences. Great. We will definitely touch on some of those things as we go through. So thank you for that. And please keep adding some stuff into the chat. So there's more to the podcast than just the podcast. So that's an important prompt for you all. But it's also about understanding that you got to a certain level with your business. You grew it to a certain point by doing lots of different things. And I'm sure you've all done different elements of marketing as you've gone along the way. But you can only take it to a certain level without becoming the real expert and well-known in your space. I'm going to tell you that the podcast strategy is the best strategy to be able to do that. And as we go through, you'll understand a little bit more about that. So let's get the chat happening a little bit more. Give me a yes in the chat if you are a busy business owner. I hope that there's no one here that's not a busy business owner. Let me know. Give me a few yeses or some thumbs up in the chat. I want to see where everyone is at, because it is hard being in business, right? We cover a lot of stuff and there's a lot of things to do. So adding podcasts into your strategy, I don't want this to overwhelm. Busy director in a real estate agency. Fair enough. Yes. Well, you're busy in that particular role. So I think that's the interesting thing here. Busy is one of those things. Yes, Jeff, I appreciate the support there, and yeah, absolutely, a podcast is going to get you seen and heard. So let's get into this. I want to go through and look at some of the problems, because we need to understand what we need to improve so we can see what the gaps are that you've got. Because as I said, you've got to a certain point, and I'm sure you've all got figures in your head, and I'm not going to ask you to put that into the chat or do anything, but you've got ideas in your head of where you want to take the business to, whether that's an overall figure, whether it's a monthly figure. You've got ideas of where to get it, of where you want the business to be. In order to achieve that, you need to be doing more. So let's take this to the next level. I want to ask you a few questions, and please, I want to get some answers in the chat here. I'm going to give you a scale here of 1 to 10. How confident are you with the podcast technology, to be able to create it on your own? It's important to understand on your own. So on a scale of 1 to 10, how good are you? 10 being, yep, whiz bang, I am great at all of this stuff. I've used the technology before. I know exactly what I'm doing. I can edit it and get it going straight away without any hassle at all. And 1 being, I am just at the beginning stages, really don't know too much about any of it, and it's going to take me a while. That's great if you're at a high level with all the technology, because there is a lot to get on top of when it comes to podcast technology. Because remember, you've got everything from the recording stuff to the editing stuff to the publishing stuff. So there's technology, there's equipment, there's understanding what's right to use, when to use it, how to use it, and be able to do it all on your own as a solo podcaster. So that's great if you're in that position of being able to do that. But yes, having a team, Jeff, absolutely critical to do it, because it is one thing to be able to understand it. It's another thing to be able to do it, and to do it yourself consistently. Okay, so let's go to question number 2. Yep, there we go. Okay. How well known are you with the people you want people to know you in your area of expertise? So on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being everybody knows me, I'm a big name, I'm basically the Steve Bartlett of my particular area, and if you ask just about anyone in my sphere of influence, they would all know me. And right at the other end is nobody knows me, I don't have any presence, I'm just starting out. So 4 is probably where I imagine there are some people getting there. It's yes, not as high as you'd like to be, and that's the trick here, right? You want to be well known. You want to be positioned as an expert in your area. So keep that in mind. We've got some low scores in there, and these are things we're going to work through. Okay, last question that I want to ask you: how confident are you in efficiently marketing your business and your expertise? Because efficiency is on a lot of levels. There's efficiency in time, there's efficiency in your ability to do it, in your desire to do it, there's efficiencies in the cost of doing it. So how good are you on the marketing side of things? Okay, so good, we've got a few responses in there. That's great. And I know, Jeff, you've got a great team behind you as well. So that does help when you've got that. So Fantastic. All right. So keep these scores in mind because I can see a lot of you have got lots of gaps, and that's what I wanted to put in your mind is that there are gaps to fill here, and this is where the opportunities lie. Okay. Why it pays to be well known? Well, very simple idea why it pays to be well known. Because once you're well known, you have opportunities coming to you. If you have opportunities coming to you, you're no longer having to spend lots of time in a outward marketing and sales strategy because people are knocking on your door. They know who you are, they know exactly what you do, and it's the right people coming to you as well. I think that is something that you cannot forget. We all hate it when we put something up and you get a whole lot of people that really are not your core audience. They might know who you are, but they're not the right people to buy from you. The more people that you can be known for that are actually the right people to buy from makes a huge difference to your business. So we're going to start unpacking some of these strategies as we go through. This is why podcasting is the best tool for business. There are a few elements here that I want to go through. So the first one is authentic storytelling. So at a point where we have a whole lot of AI writing lots of things that are very generic and even editing things down, even if you do go to the effort of writing something, it's often so severely edited, they don't get to hear your true voice. They don't get to hear your stories and how you respond to things. If you think about it, most businesses are based on referrals. Referrals happen because you're having actual conversations with people and they get to know you and they get to know your stories and your insights, and therefore they decide to refer you to somebody else. Podcasting is that opportunity to amplify that big time. Okay, the next point that I want to talk about is thought leadership. I've done surveys on this, and it's very interesting when you do this. Done surveys on LinkedIn and other places and said, who is a thought leader? And it's amazing how many people consider themselves a thought leader. But then when you ask the next question, it sort of falls flat because you can't be a thought leader if you don't have an audience. If your only audience is your immediate team and a few people around you that know you, you're not a thought leader. To be a thought leader and to make a difference, you need an audience. You need a platform that to regularly be talking to those people. So here's where podcasting takes you to the next level. It's about this whole idea of a cascading effect. Now, what does that mean? Whoops, we're going to go back there. Apologies for that. The cascading effect is this very simple idea. The podcast gives to more than just the podcast. Let that settle in a little bit. It's more than just to the podcast. Because here's the thing, that once you have the podcast, you have materials that can be broken up, be they video, audio, written, visual. You have opportunities to break that up, to share that in multiple platforms, in multiple ways, over long periods of time. Podcasting is the only marketing tool out there that gives to a whole bunch of other marketing tools. It's not just to social media, it's to websites, to articles, to newsletters, wherever you want to put it, to YouTube, as well as the social platforms. There are plenty of different avenues. It gives to training programs. It gives to direct messaging, to your CRM. There's so many different ways that you can use what you get from a podcast. So do not get hung up on just the idea of how many listeners are you going to have to your podcast, because there are more ways that you are going to be able to engage as a result of having your platform, of your podcast. Okay, so let's keep moving along. So I want to unlock a little bit of your potential here. So I'm going to talk through a few key areas of what is my main a main strategy that I've got for you around podcasting. And we'll reveal a little bit more of that later on. But here's the thing, there are a few key P's here that we're going to talk to. So it needs to be personal, right? Again, like referrals that happen for so many business, it's personal. When people feel like they get to know you, it makes a huge difference. They understand who you are, what you're about, and why you're different to the next person. And your stories, your insights, they're the things that resonate. At the end of the day, people still do business with people. And so if you're in any of those kinds of games where that matters, then being personal is a big thing in order to get to the center part of what we're going to talk about in a moment. So you need a presence, like what we just talked about. You need to be everywhere. You cannot just be in one space. If you just rely on one space, you're in trouble. Because what happens if that space collapses? I know plenty of people that have had their LinkedIn or Facebook profiles locked for one reason or another, and all of a sudden, their whole opportunity for reaching out to their audience disappears in an instant. You cannot be in just one place. Plus, the reality is you don't know where all of your audience is all the time. You have to be there. There'll be some in different places at different times. You need a presence everywhere. Now, the other P that I've got in here is polished. There is nothing worse than putting something out there that does not reflect well on who you are and what and the way your business should be projecting. It's a bit like turning up to an official meeting in your swimming costume. You wouldn't do that. So why would you do that with a podcast or with any of your marketing material either? It needs to make you look good. It needs to make sure that it reflects your brand and the way that you want to be seen. So that is an important thing to do. Now, right at the heart of all of this, we talk about this whole concept of potential. Now, what is potential? Potential is this simple idea that what you're going to get out of this is more than just the podcast. It is about ultimately unlocking opportunities so that you can grow your business. What does grow your business mean? Grow your business means that you get more money, more time to yourself, more time to do the things that you want to do, more time to focus on what you love doing in the business, more time to explore new things that might come your way. That is what the potential that we want to unlock. And that's what having all of those things interlocking together, what the podcast does, what the magic P is the podcast, because that is what unlocks your potential more than anything else, because you get to tell stories and insights and share them in so many different ways. Okay, so one of the things that I want to point out to do here is you've got a bit of a direction here, but you need to have an intention. You need to have a plan, because with just having this idea without a strategy to back it up is not going to get you there. So yes, and I appreciate that comment earlier on, Jeff. You need a few buckets to reach people. Absolutely, you do. So let's get into this. I want to reveal a little bit of a plan, and I'm going to make this as simple as possible for you for the podcast. Here we go. Very simple. First thing you got to do is have an absolute strategy. Strategy is about understanding who your audience is. See, one of the things with a podcast is, and it's no different to any marketing, by the way, is you have to understand who your audience is. Sounds simple, but most people do not do the hard yards in truly understanding who they are and working on some persona or avatar building, whichever way you want to look at it, and really getting down deep into it. So when you are having a podcast, and again, you're writing any of your marketing material or anything else that you're doing, you want to make sure that it's going to resonate with them. What are the words that they like to hear? What are the things that will trigger them and make them appreciate what you're talking to? So you need to understand all of those things, and you need to have a strategy for how you're going to get the podcast out there as well. Because like I said, the strategy is also about how you make sure that you cover all the things from editing, general production, to organizing the podcast in the first place, to the graphics, the music, all of those kinds of things that go part of it, to also publishing it and promoting it in lots of different places. You must have a strategy for doing that and extracting all of that content and using it in a systematic way to go on multiple platforms in multiple formats, and to keep using it, right? Remember, one of the little tips and tricks I can give you is that just because you released an episode today doesn't mean you can't talk about an episode as well that happened 6 months ago. You absolutely can, so long as the topic is relevant, and that happens all the time. Share the love all around, and don't just neglect an episode once you are moving to the next one. Okay, once you have all of the strategy and everything sorted, The launch is relatively easy, right? You sit down, you're recording a few podcast episodes, you're enacting everything in your strategy, you're putting it out there, you've got that system in place. The cascading effect is what I alluded to before, is making sure that part of that system is publishing it everywhere, putting reels on all the different platforms, putting short articles, polls, having downloadable tools on your website so you can build a database from it, having a web page dedicated to your podcast, having articles going on your normal website, blog articles that are going to attract some attention in that way. Lots and lots of different ways. Maybe eventually building a training program. There are different ways to do it. Alerting associations and other places that your podcast exists. Even having a strategy where you guest on other people's podcast because you can take some of that content and use it in a different way as well. That is a huge thing to think about. And you eventually want to get to that iconic phase. You want to get to where the Steve Bartletts and those people are at, and that's to become iconic. That does not happen overnight, but if you use this system and you follow these simple 4 steps, you will get there. It might take you on average about 3 years to get to that point, but you will have a very significant audience if you follow all of these simple steps. Now, there's more to it, obviously, that I alluded to than that, but I wanted to keep it relatively simple for you to follow. Okay, so here is what success looks like. You want to be positioned as the expert. Now, this is one of the key things that I want to mention here. There are some other points that you'll see on the screen here, but being positioned as the expert is the key. So one of the great mistakes that many podcasters make is they just go on and they say, right, I'm going to have a podcast, and they go do one of 2 things. They think they can either just talk by themselves. That is very, very difficult. There are not many podcasters that pull that off well. A great podcast feels like you are having a conversation with your audience, and the people listening in are thinking they are talking to me. To be able to consistently talk to an audience and it just be you is hard. I know I do it from time to time as well, and it's not easy, and I'm not going to say I'm amazing at pulling that off. It is quite difficult to do, and I can tell you, as I said, I've had 35 plus years experience of doing this. It's not a core thing for most people to be able to do that. The second option that people take is they go, great, I'm going to get guests on my podcast. Now, one of the things that I want you to sit and take in is there are 2 roles in a podcast. There's the guest and there's the expert. There's the host and there's the expert. Which one are you? Are you the host or are you the expert? Because you cannot be both. Nobody does that well when they are trying to be both. You are one or the other. The reason you are starting the podcast is because you want to be seen as the go-to expert, right? We went through all of that. That is the reason why you've started the podcast. So why would you come on and take guests on and not be positioned as the expert? Now, does that mean you can't have guests on the program? Absolutely not. But what I will tell you is that having a co-host whose single job is to be the host is everything. They will help you promote you in different ways. You can have a great guest on the program, but having the host coming back to you, for example, and saying, well, you're also an expert. What do you think? Is absolutely everything. Plus, just because you can have people on your show does not make you a great host either. I've seen many, many podcasts where the hosts are very ordinary. They either talk too much and don't allow the guest on. They ask terrible questions. They're not really listening because they're thinking about too many other things. And they just don't have that way of making that conversation flow. A co-host will change that. The other thing that you need to think about is time efficiency. I can tell you one of the reasons why so many podcasts fall over is not only do they realize they're spending all their time promoting a guest and not themselves, they also realize how much time it takes. Look, on average, for a 30-minute podcast, it's going to take about 6 hours. That's right, 6 hours I'm talking about from planning through to publishing, about 6 hours. That is a lot of time. If you think about people going, well, that's great, I'm going to have a podcast every week. Well, that means you've basically written off the better part of a day a week on your podcast. Is it worth doing that? Well, I'm going to say to you, it's not. It's not worth you doing it by yourself. Don't do it by yourself. It needs to be time efficient because here's the thing that happens as well. The minute you get a phone call from a client that says, oh, I need this project done urgently, and they're a paying client, of course, which are you going to do? The podcast or the client work? Of course, you are going to do the client work. So the podcast is such a great tool for you. It needs to be time efficient. It needs to fit in. So there are ways to do that so that you're outsourcing a lot of the things. Again, I know some of you said you've got the technical knowledge and you understand all of the bits and pieces, but just because you can doesn't mean you should. I'm going to use this example for you as well, right? So all of you right now have a phone in your pocket. That phone is the most powerful camera that you've probably ever owned. You probably have 10,000 plus photographs either on your phone or in the cloud that you've stored and taken over the years. Of those 10,000 photographs, how many of those would stack up against a professional photographer? You may have fluked one or two, but that's probably it. Just because you have the opportunity doesn't mean you should do it. I applaud being able to have some of that technical knowledge and understand what those things are, but it is taking away from your core business and ultimately is the reason why 99% of podcasts do not get to the 20 episode mark. Okay. And managing internally all of these things. One of the things that changes with all of this, and I know Jeff has an internal team, but his business is a little bit different because he offers some of these teams to other people. So I'm going to put you aside a little bit, Jeff, and it's a bit of a unique circumstance. But most people, you don't want to be managing this internally because then you still go back to having to have the technical knowledge. It's going to take you time to do that. You just want all of this done for you. That is one of the things to think about. The podcast is a great strategy, but get it done for you. Okay. So again, success, as I alluded to before, the cascading impact, and ultimately becoming iconic. So I want to make this impactful for you. This is one opportunity to take out your phones or to grab the URL. I might just hit this in the chat. I'll put it in there as well. So you've also got it in there. Okay. Oops. I'll go back. Sorry. For those of you that haven't heard of an organization called B1G1, I encourage you to find out a little bit more about them. B1G1 allows me to make an impact on your behalf somewhere in the world so that we can recognize that thank you for you showing up here today is for us to go ahead and support a different organization in the world on your behalf. All you have to do is log in there and make a choice. That's it. That's all you have to do. Go in there, select one of the options, either use the QR code or the link that's also in the chat. We'd love you to do that. And we love the fact that just for showing up here today, we can also help you make an impact on somewhere else in the world in a really positive way. So, okay, let's move on because I want to make sure that we can build you a podcast system because this is how you're going to do it. So the next step I want to point out as well is that, as I alluded to earlier on and is in the chat there as well, you need to book in that one-on-one session with me because this is the opportunity to work out what you actually need next. I'm going to talk to you about all of the steps that are involved here, but where you are at is going to be different for everybody. And I want to work that out with you and point you in the right direction as to what you can do to help make all of this happen. So make sure you are booking that in. Right. This is the overall plan. There is a lot to take in here. I am not going to talk to all of these different elements here today. We don't have enough time to do all of that. But needless to say, we zoned in on the middle and keep your eye on the middle, which is unlocking all of that potential because you want your business to grow. You want more cash. You want to be able to do the things that you love doing. All of that lies at the heart of doing all of this. But there are lots of different elements to breaking all of this apart and making it all happen. You need to be positioned expertly. That's one of the keys. We talked about time efficiency as well in there. I think they are important. You want to be in a position where you are attracting people. And most importantly as well, you need to be making sure you have a way of making sure it is resonating with the right audience to attract them and that means being in multiple platforms. All of those things are really critical. Again, simplified in many respects, but these are the core elements of what it takes to get your podcast into that iconic phase. This is the Bauer podcast system. It is all of the pieces at a high level of what you need to be worried about to make sure that they get you to where you need to be. So again, we're going to have some opportunity for some questions as we go through a little bit later on. One of the questions I will answer a little bit later is about equipment, because I get asked that all the time, and I know it was mentioned at the start of this session as well. So, okay. So if you want to hit me up in the chat as well, I'd love to know what your biggest takeaway is so far. It gives me an opportunity to take a sip of water. But what is the main thing that you've taken out of this to date? Where are you at with your journey and your thinking as a result of some of the things we've been talking about today? Don't be shy. Come on, hit me up with some things in there. So finding your identity before commencing your own podcast, absolutely. And I will just say to that, that's part of the strategy that I know when I work with people, that's what we do, is we try and understand who you are and what makes you stand out. Yes, costs. Look, anything is a cost in business, but there are ways of looking at costs in a different way. So I'm going to jump into something else that I think there's a really nice little point to make for you. When you think about how much you post on social media at the moment, the average when I talk to people is that it takes them about 2 hours from the moment they think about posting to it actually being posted. 2 hours of your time. So if you post twice a week on LinkedIn, and the LinkedIn experts will tell you post at least 3 times, and we're just talking about one platform here, right? If you post twice a week, that's 4 hours of your time. How much are you paying yourself, right? How much are you worth an hour? Now, we're all here and we're all in the professional space. We probably should all be paying ourselves at least $500 an hour. But even if you said $250 an hour and work out what the number is for you, I'm making the maths quite easy because $250 I think should be a minimum. If that's the case, 4 hours of your time a week just posting on LinkedIn is $1,000 of your time, $52,000 a year of your time doing that. Imagine if you could be focusing that time on sales or playing golf or whatever it is that you want to be doing with your time, finding other ways that are making money without doing that. I can tell you the podcast doesn't cost you $52,000 a year, not unless you're doing a Steve Bartlett style show with 40 people being employed, which none of you are going to be doing. So the reality is it doesn't cost you that much, but there is a cost to business of what you are doing now and not doing as well as you could be doing if you had the podcast system in place. So that's something to think about. Definitely a professional investment for all of this. You don't use socials. Well, I tell you, if you don't use social media, you're missing out because that's where a lot of people are, right? There are people here today. There are people here that have registered all because they saw something on social media. That's what gets it going, and it does. That's for so many businesses. Yep, you can definitely use a virtual assistant to help you with that, and all of this takes team to do that. Okay, so there's some great takeaways, and I think the co-hosting one, I appreciate that being in there. It is huge. I can tell you there are many podcast production companies that are out there. The truth is, I was watching one ad this morning. They go, here's the studio and you go and record and then we'll do the stuff. I'm like, no, the problem is getting the actual recording right. And you can only do that right if you've got a person sitting there alongside of you co-hosting. One of the other things that I will give you a little tip as we move on is, if those of you that are thinking about, I should go and hire or jump into a podcast studio, honestly, bit of a waste of money. There isn't much value in having the same setup as lots of other people have. It is perfectly acceptable to do it online. I've seen some of the biggest names around that have great podcasts that all record it from doing it online. There is no reason for it to be in person, particularly Even if you're talking about it wanting to be visual, I know that it doesn't matter to Apple, for example, because I just had approval to put some podcasts out there on Apple, and they only approve a small handful of them on their new video release, and that only sorry, I should say none of those podcasts that I've had approved are recorded in a studio. They're all done online. So another little tip for you. So, okay. Okay, so I can see some messages coming in there. Dermot, that's fine. We've exchanged some messages. We'll get back to you later on. All right, let's move on. Again, I just want to remind you to book in that session. It's in the chat there. We want you to be able to create a podcast plan. That's one of the important things to do. Once we have that review session, you'll have some clarity to be able to start working on how we can create a plan, whether we do it together or whether you do it on your own. That's the next step from there. Then you obviously got to do the podcast and launch your podcast. It's simple, but there are quite a few things that you need to do along the way. And I want to make sure that each of you has that opportunity to do that. Okay, so here's the reality. Even armed with today's knowledge, 99% of you are still not going to reach the 20 episodes. And that's the truth. That's what we alluded to at the beginning and what I've mentioned before. And I think it is worth reiterating this. I want you to get past 20 episodes, but you need a plan. And if that plan is you doing it on your own, unfortunately, the chances of you getting past those 20 episodes are relatively small. Doesn't mean you won't. And if you really are determined, you will absolutely do it, but at what cost? And who is going to be on your podcast? What are you actually doing? This is one of the realities, again, just finishing that point on the co-hosting, that so many people stop their podcast because not only do they realize the amount of time that it's taking them, but all they're doing is promoting somebody else and not themselves. I don't want you to be doing that. Don't fall into that trap. Make sure that you are in the podcast game because it is there to grow your business, to have you positioned as the expert in your space, more people coming to you so your competitors are not getting the attention that you deserve to be getting. That's one of the things that I want you to take away from this. Okay. Because at the end of the day, this is a very simple concept, but it is one that is there for you to absorb, that if you've got all of this information, but you don't implement anything, all you're going to do is be frustrated. It's exactly why I want you to take that next step and to book in a time with me, because I don't want you to be frustrated. Let's map out a plan for you, whatever you need to be. And there are lots of options for you to get podcasts happening in lots of different ways. So have that discussion and we can point you in the right direction, whether it's with me or with somebody else. I'm happy to point you in the right direction as to how that might happen for you. Okay, so who this is not for, and this is important because there'll be some of you here today and some of you that are watching and listening, that the podcast is more about a hobby. It's a little side note. Look, I definitely had a conversation with someone the other day who they're going through some medical issues. They wanted to record a podcast around those medical issues. Very great reason for having a podcast, but I'm here. This is probably not for you if you're in that category. If you're in the hobby category, fantastic. And if hopefully you've got something out of today, I'm still happy to meet with you if I can point you in the right direction. But I want to talk to the people that this is for. Okay, this is for business owners. This is for people who are involved in a business in some way that want to grow their business. You are ready to invest in your business to grow. I'm not going to lie to you, there is a cost. Again, whether you do it with me or with somebody else, or you try and do it even if you try and do it on your own, there is a cost, right? There's a cost of your time, and whether you pay yourself or not, that's up to you. There's a cost of the equipment. There's a cost of all of the software. There's a cost of different licensing for different things to do from graphics onwards. There is a lot of stuff to think about. There is a cost. Okay. So don't think there isn't a cost for you. You have to be ready to invest in your business because you want to be seen as the go-to person in your space. You want to get the attention instead of your competitors. You want those opportunities coming your way. Okay. So again, I've putting this up here. I'm not going to harp on it too much longer because hopefully you've all had an opportunity to grab it. Definitely jump onto this and grab this so we can look at the next step together. So book those sessions in so we can get to all of that. Okay. Here are the three simple ideas that I want you to take away from this meeting today. To be a great podcaster, positioned as the expert, which we've talked to, you need the production because it needs to be at a decent level. I have, for example, I've been involved, as I mentioned to you, for 35 plus years on doing all of this. Can I edit and do things? I absolutely can. Is editing what I do on a day-to-day basis? No, it's not. And I have, I'm thinking of one of my editors in particular who is an absolute gun. He makes me sound and look even better than I could possibly ever do because they're great at what they do. And he is particularly great and does that for a lot of people, not just me, but for my clients as well. And you need that production because you want to look great. It's a simple little thing here too. Like here's a little tip for you. I advise against using virtual backgrounds. Now, some of my clients insist on it. Not a problem if that's what you insist on doing. But I love a good quality production and being able to do some simple things. I'm not going to go into all of the details here today because there's a lot involved in it. But to set up a simple background like the one that I've got behind me, it's pretty simple. There's a bookcase here, which is, from a Kmart type place, is about $25, $35. Simple. We've all got books and things that we can put on there to make it look good. We've probably collected a number of business books, which is what you can see on the shelves on there behind me. Also, I've got behind me a plant. Hey, they don't cost much to get a nice plant to sit there as well. And I've got a sign on the wall. That's, you need something to kind of break up the background a little bit. That sign, which I love, I think it cost me about $130 off Amazon. So to get something, and the actual space that takes up, it's about, both your arm lengths. Okay. So it's not a big space that you need to find somewhere to make it look really great. That's a little extra tip for you as well. From a promotion point of view, you need to have set up a way of telling people about the podcast and using the material for it. Because just publishing it to any of the platforms is not going to get you an audience. And even if it does start getting you an audience, it doesn't matter if you're not doing all of the other things around it. Having the great show notes, making sure that there is an opportunity to capture people for them to be encouraged to come back to you, whether it is downloading something or booking a meeting or whatever those different things might be. All of that is part of the promotion phase as well. So you bring people into your universe. So they are three very important things that absolutely get to the middle bit, which is unlocking the potential that we talked about. Okay. So I want to take on, I've got a few minutes here extra that we've got, and I'm happy to stay online a little bit longer if you want me to answer any of your questions. I'm going to try and look at some of these that might have been put in the chat along the way. So please hit me up for some questions. If you feel like it and you want to take yourself off mute and do that, please do that. Do make sure that you are booked in for that session as I spoke about. Now, one question that I was asked earlier on that I'm going to answer now, which is the most asked question, which is about equipment. Okay, so let me delve into equipment in a couple of simple ways. You don't need to spend money if you don't want to. Okay, that's the simple thing, because usually the camera that you might want, the cameras on a lot of laptops or computers are reasonable. You can buy a half decent camera for $150 somewhere, a webcam. But honestly, use your mobile phone. If you hook your mobile phone up and use that to capture your video and even to capture some of your audio, it's pretty good. So there are ways that you can do that. I would recommend, however, a microphone. Now, do not under any circumstances use your earpods, your earphones, your headsets with a microphone coming down off it. None of those are any good. Okay, they are not built for recording podcasts. And you can hear the difference. And even though you may not personally spend a lot of time hearing the difference, I can tell you that been involved in lots of tests and research over the years. It makes the world of difference when you have that microphone that gives you a fuller and better sound. Now, one of the microphone that I recommend for people is the Rode USB NT Rode NT USB Plus, I should say. So the Rode NT USB Plus. You can buy it anywhere. If you're in Australia, I believe it's sold through Officeworks and JB Hi-Fi and those places. If you're somewhere else in the world, you can get it through Amazon fairly easily. It's about 240 Australian dollars. So that's what, about 190 US dollars, I would think, somewhere in that sort of bracket. So it's not expensive. You can use the microphone everywhere, every day, because we're all on Zoom calls and things all the time. You'll get lots of value out of it. That's the microphone that I recommend people to use. There are lots of great microphones out there as well. So definitely feel like you can jump on board with